Welcome to the Wounds of the Faithful podcast, brought to you by DSW Ministries. Your host is singer, songwriter, speaker, and domestic violence advocate Diana Winkler. She is passionate about helping survivors in the church heal from domestic violence and abuse and trauma. This podcast is not a substitute for professional counseling or qualified medical help. Now, here is Diana.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to part 2 of my conversation with Scotty Aemis. We had a wonderful time with hearing his background and how he came to adopt 2 children from Russia in a horrible orphanage and the surprises that he encountered when things just didn't go the way that they planned. All you need is love. It's not necessarily true. We need a little bit more than love to parent children, including children that have had severe trauma. So I'm excited to hear the rest of his story about some examples of what works and what doesn't work and what resources are out there for parents. We're going to talk about discipline in detail. Sometimes discipline needs to be put on the back burner or done a different way. You first have to establish trust in the relationship before you do anything. So I'm not going to repeat his bio. If you haven't listened to part 1, please go back and listen to that. I'm not going to delay any further, continuing my conversation with Scotty Aemis. Enjoy. How do you pick a counselor? How do you know that they are trauma informed? Is there a list that you would say, okay, these are what the therapist or the counselor should have? You can't just do a Google search, right?
So most people will work with an organization of some sort, a family counseling organization. And then within that organization, they have a different group of different counselors. And usually they either assign a behavior management, in Pennsylvania it's called BHS, but it's just a case manager. And then you begin a relationship with that case manager, and then you work with them to assign the right counselors for the kids. I'm not sure how they do it in all the states, but there's usually some person you can coordinate. And if you know that what is important, you can communicate to that person and that agency, and then they'll help you find the right person that meets those requirements. So for us, because we decided that trauma was the key, we insisted that person was not a behaviorist, behavior management specialist, and instead their specialty and their interest was in trauma. And then we had a conversation with them, and once they explained a little bit about their understanding of it, and we were on the same wavelength, we said, yeah, that's the right person. They understand where the priorities are. It takes time. Sometimes you have to be willing to say, no, that's not the right counselor for us. And by the way, this is where I get in also to one of the things for the key tenets of solving trauma. I use the line, it's not how many great things you do for your child, it's how many negative things you can eliminate.
Ooh.
Because one of the keys to healing from trauma is eliminating the re-traumatization. We can be great and wonderful at home, and all of a sudden they send them off to school. They're getting re-traumatized all day long. And they come home and they're upset and they're dysregulated and they're having all kinds of issues. And then we sit around and wonder and say, what's wrong? How come my kid isn't improving? Well, he's not improving because it's like your kid into war every day. Of course they're not.
Just going to say that.
And so it goes beyond school. We found we switched churches. A church where a pastor and his wife happened to be the same thing. I talked to you before about informed me about trauma because they had adopted kids. And all of a sudden we realized that understanding of kids with special needs permeates throughout the church. And so we could take them to Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher understood about trauma, understood about special needs, and could deal with them. If they acted up in church or just popped up and walked out, some churches are, what's wrong with that child? Why are they up and moving on a row? Some of these kids, by the way, have ADHD as well, and having them sit down in church pew for a 25 or 30-minute sermon is pretty difficult.
Good luck.
Pretty difficult for anybody. And how well does the church willing to go with it and work with it? So we found the right church for our kids. What it was church in that environment. And the same thing with my son loved Boy Scouts, but he was in a troop that was wild and crazy. And I had to move him to a much more controlled troop where I could have a conversation with the scoutmaster. And he didn't know anything about trauma, but he was willing to sit and listen and then work with me in terms of what we need to do for our children. So one of the things I teach with our parents is that you kind of look at all the areas of their life and create an environment for them that's safe and not out of control. Oftentimes it's even within family or extended family. The big Christmas dinner or the big Thanksgiving dinner, all of a sudden, my big family, and all of a sudden, lots of things going on, and TV and music and this. So you have to be willing to say, we love the family, but this year we're going to skip this. It's okay to have a controlled environment. It's okay not to have TVs and phones and iPads in the room. They don't need all that stimulus. They just need something to calm over time that can help them take their brains up to the prefrontal cortex. It's simple, but very difficult.
Glad you mentioned the family holidays. Even those of us that haven't been through trauma, that it's a stressful situation, Thanksgiving and Christmas and the getting along with people that you don't see all the time, and the food and the noise. The family I came from, we're all talking at once, and that's because they want to be heard, or you got people asking
chaos, right?
Yeah, it is chaos. And even for those of us that don't struggle with trauma or those issues, I tell people in my Mending the Soul group, you make Christmas and Thanksgiving what's right for your family, and don't think you're obligated to go to those big get-togethers. Maybe have a smaller one, like, okay, have your parents over or have uncles over that you trust, and just have a mini celebration together. But you don't have to have the big, huge, stressful event. It's not worth the anguish and the aftermath that you got to deal with when you get home, right?
That's so true. And to throw on top of that, one of the buzzwords going around now, but it's so true, is generational trauma.
Yeah.
It goes from generation to generation. And why do we want to bring our kids into a situation that, we might not have had the trauma, or we survived it, or we got beyond it? We've dealt with it over the years. But why put them back in that environment? We're constantly working to improve upon that. And we can break the generational trauma with us or with our kids. It's a beautiful thing.
No, they didn't deal with it. They pushed it under the rug. They ignored it. They pretend it wasn't there. So the people that advocate for a lot of the generational trauma is nobody talks about it. And so it doesn't go away because you don't talk about it and deal with it. Yeah. So you hit a lot of great points. I am glad you mentioned your church. I'm very fortunate that I have a church that has trauma-informed children's director. And we have special Sunday school teachers that they have special class just for them with a bunch of different variety of special needs kids. And I don't have any children myself, but
Sure.
I am so supportive of our church that is trauma-informed. They're the ones that told me about Mending the Soul. And so thank God that I did find this church, because then I can lead others to a trauma-informed Sunday school for their kids. We're getting a new building for the kids. We just finished the fundraising, and now we're in the process of actually constructing the building for children for the next generation. And a lot of churches are not that way, that they have people that are trained in trauma.
It's a blessing that you have that. Also one of the things I talk about in churches or with faith is that, the Bible is very clear that God adopted us into his kingdom.
Yes.
We're all adopted. And so the idea of differentiating your specific parental upbringing, to me, from a faith perspective, it doesn't matter, because thank goodness he adopted us, or God adopted us, because he's going to adopt us into his kingdom.
And Jesus loved children, and they were precious to him. And he was countercultural in his day, that children were just, annoyances or be seen and not heard, but he actually took them into his arms and loved on them and ministered to them because they're valuable.
We can just model his way. All these things, all these problems go away. Isn't it amazing?
I know that we talked about a lot of things. Was there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to tell the audience today?
Oh, there's a couple of things I was going to bring up. One was that, again, back to the behavior modification issue. With trauma, it's important to know that consequences don't work, because consequences are based on trusting that person and they're giving us a positive or a negative based on our behavior, but our behavior is based on whether we trust and love that person that's doing it. Until you work on the relationship, and we call it in our system positive safe relationships, PSR program. Until you work on the relationship, don't try to work on the consequences. I think that was an important part. I often talk about the fact that kids are looking for three things from us, right? They want to know, do you love me? Do you trust you? And can you help me? Which really comes down to love, hope, and empathy. And if we can focus those as our priorities, the kids will heal on their own. We're not here to fix our children. We're here to create an environment where they can heal. So parents are so too often, I run into my parents who are trying 10, 20 different things. I'll do this and I'll do this. I'll create this. I'll make this happen. They don't need all that. They just need a safe, quiet, loving environment. And over time, they will heal. So trust the kids and be willing to invest the time and that it takes. And as we spoke before, listen to Jesus as our model, and the kids will be do better. We just have to give each other some grace, and then over time, our kids will learn and our kids will heal. So that's pretty much, I guess the only thing I can show is I have a book out. End up being number one. And I'm not even an author, but I want to put something out, and it ended up being number one in 8 Amazon. So just go about trauma, and we can just get the word out best we can.
It looks like a great book. So your children, how old are they now?
And I would never have thought this 5, 6 years ago. And they're both talking about college now. Wonderful.
So they made it to high school and now they're going to college. That is so exciting. You made it to the other side. By the grace of God.
Close, almost, yes. But yes, and they're out, they go on missions. My kids went on a mission trip to El Salvador last year. They care for others.
Oh, precious.
That's the cycle that we want to go through. So they don't even think about their background. They just move on and, they're teenagers. Now they're teenagers and they want to look at their phone all day.
Yeah, that's what everybody else wants to do, including us adults. How can the folks get a hold of you to take advantage of your resources, get the book?
Our website, as well as our Facebook and Instagram, is all Child Trauma Sherpa or ctsherpa.com. And Trauma Sherpa on Facebook. Love to have your people join our group. We don't sell things. Everything I do is we discuss as ministry. The book I have up is really at cost. I'm not looking to make any money off it. I'm just looking to get the word out and share the methodology, the brain-based methodology. We know it works, and we just want to be able to share it to as many people as possible and create the force in parenting that can make changes in our society.
I so enjoyed our conversation. I'm very passionate about what you are doing and making a difference in these children's lives. I definitely want to keep you as a resource for folks that need help with their kids. If I'm in Philadelphia anytime soon, I'll come visit.
Great. We love that. And by the way, we even have a counselor that you can connect on from our webpage. The first visit is for free. If they're frustrated, need some help, we have a professional on staff that can listen and give some ideas as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I so appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you. And God bless as well. And thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Wounds of the Faithful podcast. If this episode has been helpful to you, please hit the subscribe button and tell a friend. You can connect with us at dswministries.org, where you'll find our blog along with our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel links. Hope to see you next week.